I'm Bee.
And I'm Renske.
We are so grateful that you are here.
Welcome to School of Joy. Welcome to another episode of School of Joy. Today we are going to discuss emotions, energy in motion. That's one thing I really like. What I've learned about emotions is that it is energy in motion, really. So we'll dive into that a bit more. From my own experience, for a long time in my life, I have felt overwhelmed with emotions. As a highly sensitive person, I did not understand my emotions. It's been quite a ride. And I think what we're doing in this episode really is giving you as listener a deeper understanding, a bigger perspective of what emotions are. And then also some tools how to navigate big emotions and how to work with them, how you can transform really dense emotions into more calm and peace into your life. So, B, would you like to maybe share first, like you've done a couple of years of self-mastery now, you're deep into a breathwork course at the moment where you also get this deeper understanding of the relationship of the breath and emotions, where they're stored in the body, how to work with them. Could you maybe kick off with your perspective on emotions and how that has maybe changed as well over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, just like you, really, being a highly sensitive person, emotions have always been very big for me. We talked about that in our highly sensitive episode. Yeah, and I think I've been on quite a journey, I think, with emotions in my life. Um, when I was younger, I think big emotions, especially negative emotions, sadness or anger, those sort of things, was sort of seen as not acceptable. And I think that is a very strong sort of cultural thing that we have in our society. That the bad emotions are not allowed, are not welcome, and that we should always be happy. And it's taken me a long time to realize that that isn't true. And I think the self-mastery work has really helped me. I love that phrase, energy in motion, because what I've come to realize is that all emotions are hugely valuable to us, and that really our emotions are just messengers that we can have. Fear says, oh, I need to pay attention. That's a biologically driven thing. We need to pay attention. Then there might be something that means we're not safe. Yeah, says a boundary has been crossed. There's a boundary of mine that I'm not willing to cross. Sadness says something matters to me. And yeah, so it's taken me a long while to really accept my emotions as they come and go. And yeah, and I think, we're going to speak a little bit about the deeper truth of our emotions. Renska, I know you've got some stuff to share around that. But doing my breathwork course, it's really interesting because, last night I was doing some homework for my course and I was reading about how emotion gets stored in our body and the impact of not really engaging with our emotions. And really all the research actually supports that if we do engage and feel our emotions, that it actually has a positive impact on our well-being. So those of us that think that we can only be happy and that we need to, bat away any negative feelings, actually we're damaging ourselves more. And yeah, the research behind this is really interesting. So for highly sensitive people that do experience a lot of emotions, and for me, like emotion isn't something that I can really suppress. Actually, yeah, all the evidence supports that that is a healthier way of being. But of course, it's not always acceptable, or certainly in certain people believe it's not acceptable to cry or to be angry. Yeah.
The biggest thing that I've learned over the years around emotions is that they are sort of the top layer. They're sitting as like what you said, they're messengers. They're messengers. I see them as messengers of our soul, saying, hey, can we please pay attention to this? Because there's a deeper programming, and then we're talking more about the mental stuff. That's like beliefs, thought patterns. There's a deeper programming that causes separation within us. And that deeper programming sort of creates for us an emotion to feel. And it's not to necessarily analyze the emotion, but because I think for myself, for a long time, I've held the belief that I had to understand the emotion before I was allowing myself to feel it. So I was trying to analyze, like, oh, where this is coming from? Why am I feeling this way? Also trying to push away and suppress it. But then, of course, realizing it comes back multiplied. And learning that if I allow myself to feel a feeling without, letting it completely overwhelm me, or like without, how do I say that, it becoming my truth, still a part of me is then like, I've learned to become an observer of what I'm feeling. So there's a part still observing, hey, oh, we are feeling extremely frustrated at the moment, or we are feeling actually a lot of lack, or we are feeling fearful around something in our lives. I can feel it now, I can observe it at the same time, and then that allows me to go deeper into my heart space and work with the programming that sits underneath. So understanding, I guess, the layers of the depth of our being, like the deeper layers of emotions under it, for the mind, it's not necessarily under it, but for the mind to understand it, is like underneath it there sits this deep programming of belief systems. But we need to allow ourselves to feel the feelings, to feel the emotions, to be able to access the deeper programming. When we then access the deeper programming, we start to transform that, we start to release limiting beliefs, then what we're going to be feeling in our lives is going to change. So when we talk, for example, joy, if we want to feel more joy in our lives, we need to listen to the fear that we're feeling in our life. We need to listen to the sadness, the grief, that we're feeling and experiencing in our life, to guide us into the deeper programming that causes us to feel that way. Then release, thought patterns, attachments, beliefs, creating separation feelings, emotions. And therefore, when we start to transform that programming, we start to feel more joy in our life. As we both, have shared many times, we start to see life through a perspective of joy because we've changed what sits underneath the emotions. So I guess that's the biggest change in me, that I've not, I guess before I would be more a victim of my emotions, and now I see not the emotion as something bad when it's negative. I see it as a gift of, okay, there's something out of alignment within me. I can learn from this, I can grow from this, I can work with it. So that it's very empowering if we if we see emotions that way, because that's literally what we do. We take back our power, we take back our responsibility um, to work with it. And I think that word responsibility is another big thing that I've learned when we go into reaction. So we literally reactivate an old program, and that then causes a big emotion within us. It reactivates something that sits under the surface. When we work with that, as I just explained, when we work with that, we transform it, it becomes a response. So we then take responsibility for, what we're feeling. And that's the difference between reaction and response, is when we react, we give away our power, because we let that old programming completely embody us, and we react from that. And when we take responsibility and we respond rather than react, we take back that power. And that's the part of the self-mastery, which is, a journey. I'm not saying that I'm not reacting anymore in my life. I do, it's just a different approach. When I do react, and then, hey, oh, wait, I'm going into reaction. Let's take back the responsibility of that again. So, yeah, I guess that's for me, those have been the biggest learnings around emotions. Yeah, in the broader scope of things. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something so powerful when an emotion comes up for us. Say it's anger or sadness, but if we can just greet it with sort of compassion and curiosity, rather than rather than either going into a victim mentality, or this person is making me feel this way, or in a judgment way, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. There's something so powerful about, like, the way I sort of visualize it is that I let the emotion literally flow through me.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, as I'm learning the science behind that with my breathwork course, it's really interesting because, if we go through something traumatic, for instance, there is a cycle that needs to complete. And wild animals, not domesticated animals, but wild animals can just naturally do this. So, you'd see an animal sort of shaking after, being chased by something. And that is a biologically driven kind of process that releases and completes this cycle. Whereas humans, this is where social conditioning comes in, because perhaps something happens and it isn't safe to have a good scream, or have a good wail, or a good cry, or to shake violently, or whatever. And so quite often then that sort of gets stuck. And as I understand it, that literally gets stuck in our body.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's where I'm very interested in the breathwork, because that can be used as a tool to then release that later on. But yeah, I think emotion is something that we are here to experience.
Experience it. Yeah, totally. Yeah. What you just said, I have the perfect example of that. Like, a couple years ago, I would always bike to work, which is like a 40-minute bike ride, and I would go quite like high speed. And one day, I had this accident with a boy. I think he must have been like 13 years old, just going to high school, on his bike. So I felt really sorry for him, because we crashed into one another. Both fell on the ground. And of course, me being older, straight away took responsibility for the younger boy, making sure that he was fine, and etc. Though I felt my body wanting to shake. I felt from sort of the fear of the crash, the impact of the crash. I felt that my body wanted to shake it off, and I wanted to cry. Yet I held back of course, in the beginning, socially, because I wanted to make sure that the boy didn't feel overwhelmed by my emotion or shake, you know. That's my human mind being conditioned to then take responsibility for the other person, which there is nothing wrong with that, you know. But I knew, you know, when the moment when the boy was safe and his mum was going to pick him up and all of that, and he was fine, um, I had another probably 10 minutes to drive back home. And I took the time for like 20 minutes to simply cry and shake, cry and shake. And I just felt the scare of the accident leaving my body. Like I felt the energy, the tension that had built up leaving my body. And it reminded me, you know, like this is what animals do indeed. You know, when ducks, you know, they have a fight, they just swim off, they shake it off, and it's done, you know, it's okay. And it's the same when I see Loki, our dog, you know, he gets all like tensed up when when he sees a cat or he sees another dog that he doesn't like, and he starts to bark at them. And then of course, I'm like, Loki, stop, you know, uh, done now, you know. And then he's holding it in for a little bit, and then the cat leaves or the dog leaves, he shakes it off and he's fine again, you know. So we can learn so much from animals in that regards. And I think the beauty of breath work, from my experience, having done breath work myself, but also holding space for groups doing breath work, the shaking and the make like sounds that we can make to release stored tension in our body is just so powerful. But I do also know in the beginning this can feel so hard because we have such mental blockage, so many mental blockages to let that out, you know, that we're believing that we're not good enough to be heard, believing that it's not accepted to share how we feel, that it, you know, that we're being weird or whatever. Where if we do simply shake, sound, cry, it can, we feel so much relief, we feel so much lighter after that. So it's yeah, we can learn so much from from how animals do that. I mean, they only hold divine will, so they do not have that ego mind that sits in the way. And I think that's, we have chosen this human experience simply to learn for the ego to surrender to that divine will, and to trust our bodies, you know, to trust our the flow of the emotion rather than suppress it. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's something that I'm so passionate about, I think, because, you know, obviously, my mum experienced such severe mental illness, and
Mm.
I've sort of really, there's a lot of mental illness in that side of the family. So, I've had this fear that I'm sort of genetically doomed to
Mm.
experience that. And it's where, like, I have been fascinated then by this idea of how stuff gets stored. And the more I understand it, the more reassured I feel, actually, because there's this saying which I love: what you resist persists.
Yeah.
And if you don't have an expression of that emotion, then it doesn't just go away. You're not just batting it out of your field. It is getting in there. It is staying in there somewhere. And the research supports this, that yeah, that can come out as physical symptoms, emotional numbness, or also big explosions later. And I think that's as I understand it, that for me is probably what happened with my mum. There's a lot of suppressed stuff, and then eventually her body, her brain said no, and then that was the expression of all of this stuff that was suppressed. Yeah, and I think it is, yeah, it is such an interesting um, our body doesn't forget.
Mm.
And I think, and also, I was doing a breathwork session this week, and I wasn't having I was having an incredible somatic experience. Nothing wild was necessarily happening in my body, but my one hand was really twitching.
Mm.
Um, and as I understand, like, so I just allowed it. I didn't resist it. I didn't question it. I just said, met it with curiosity. Hey, you're welcome here. Just do what you need to do. And I don't need to understand that on a mental level. Like, that
Mm.
was just me creating the opportunity for something to be released. I don't need to understand it. And I think, yeah, there is, for me at the moment, I think there's that I am being asked to. I am very much being guided to not try and constantly work out everything on a mental level, and
Mm.
just to experience and just to feel. Um,
Yeah, I think in that regards we can learn so much from children, because I feel Lily is teaching me so much in releasing without questioning. For her, when yesterday we had a busy day. We met up with quite a big group of people, and then later in the day we had people over for dinner. So for her as a baby, that's quite a big day to come contact with so many different energies, so many different people. If it's already, a lot for us, imagine for a baby. So it's for a baby then, or whatever, even if it's a toddler, why do they get tantrums? Why do they have massive cries? Simply to release the energy that's been built up, to release the tension that's been built up in uh over the day. And I think I think for me, what I've learned, very early on after Lily was born, is to not try and shush that, which is such a big cultural belief as well, not to necessarily, um l- basically numb her crying, of
mhm,
like rocking her and like putting a dummy in. And I'm not judging, if like sometimes we do that as well. Sometimes you also need to bring her back into her stress window. I
yeah,
see the releasing and crying as like allowing her out of her stress window, and then we also need to guide them back in, because sometimes they cannot do that themselves yet. Um, but if we straight away start um, to try and shush the tantrum, try and shush the crying, then we don't give them space to actually release the tension that's built up. I think that we, as human beings, are still learning so much, that our emotions, our crying, is we are designed to release stress that way as well, as much as the babies, of course, are then also communicating, hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I have pain, or um I need comfort, I need touch. It's also a way for them to release trauma. It's also a way for them to release build up stress in the day. And not just for babies, for us the same thing. So I think what she's really teaching me is then when she releases, and I feel maybe something coming up also related to still um, processing the birth. We had quite a traumatic birth. I then allow myself to cry. I don't need to understand what you said as well. Like I've
yeah,
really come to a place where I can embrace that I don't need to understand it for me to feel it. It's enough to have an experience and then let it go. So I think we can learn a lot from our children in that regards, because they don't have that big mental programming just yet. That starts more after the first 7 years, where we start to see the build up of the programming. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really I've got a really good example of that with anger as well, because I think um, like one of the things that we say to Ren is it is okay to feel angry. It's just then how you choose then to express that anger.
Mm.
And so, for instance, hitting is not acceptable,
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you want to go and hit a pillow, if you want to go up to your room and have a fight with your pillow, that is absolutely fine, because anger is welcome here.
Mm.
And that just wasn't the message that I was given. And I really struggled with anger, and it would come out in bursts unexpectedly, from seemingly very small triggers, but actually that was an expression of much deeper stuff that was just sort of like, if you put a lid on a boiling pan,
Mm.
eventually it's going to start bubbling up, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you said as well, it just made me laugh about, I mean, I feel like this is such a British thing, but like if someone starts crying and then another person just instantly seeking in their handbag for a tissue, like, quick, let's
Yeah.
get a tissue and like,
Yeah.
wipe away those
Yeah.
tears.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just conditioning, really, and there's nothing, you know, bad about that. It's just simply, I think, us becoming aware that that is not maybe the healthiest pattern, that is not in our highest potential always. I really had to learn as well, especially holding space for groups where we are so vulnerable, to not jump into that rescuer role,
Yeah.
and to not let myself overwhelm with the emotion of another, and to simply hold my heart open. And when I do that, and when I allow the other person to feel I can stay neutral, doesn't mean I'm not caring for the other person. It's just that there's a space then for the other person to feel whatever they are feeling, really. But that's still a learning. I mean, um yeah, sometimes it goes really easily, and other times it's a bit harder, and it also depends on where my energy, that's the reflection of then my energy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a situation where one of my buddies was going through something really tough, and she sent us a voice note, and I just had this huge emotional reaction to it. And I was sobbing. I was absolutely sobbing back, and I was doing completely the opposite of what you said. But obviously, that was reflecting something in me that was
Yeah.
unresolved.
Yeah.
And so probably having a good cry was still the right, maybe not to share it with her. I don't know, but anyway.
Yes,
But yeah, I
what
think.
yeah, you needed that just then.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I feel that so much with grief, because I think, again, culturally we're just so bad at grief.
Mm.
And I remember that when my mum died, it was like, it felt like once her funeral was done, that was it.
Mm.
And when I have friends or family members that are going through grief now, and they tell me that they've been really, they've had a good cry or something, I'm like, good, good. Like, that's so good, because you're releasing the stuff that needs to come out.
Mm.
And, if you look at the way other cultures grieve, it's so different to the way that we do it. Even at a funeral in our culture, people just sort of put this stiff upper lip on, and if you do cry, you sort of do it quietly and you wipe away those
Yeah.
tears.
Let no one hear it, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, in other cultures, they have wailing ceremonies where they
Mm.
all get together as a community and wail and release. I mean, I would love to experience that. That would be
Yeah.
incredible.
I think it's very empowering to do that in a group as well. Yeah. Mm. We would have a very different world if we were doing that as human beings on a broader scale. Yeah.
I think, when you look at sort of the wider issues that humanity experiences, with violence and abuse and things, actually the majority of that is an expression of an expressed emotion, really, I
Mm.
suspect. So yeah, you're right. It would be very powerful if we all just engaged a bit more with our experiences and emotions. Mhm. So should we talk about some tools that we use for like what for you, Renska, what do you do when you experience emotion? How do you sort of process that?
I think the biggest tool I already shared at the beginning is that I'm practicing becoming the observer of my emotion rather than embodying my emotion. Because then it's completely overtaking me. If the emotion embodies, if I embody the emotion, and it doesn't mean that when I'm observing it, I'm not feeling it. It's very different. It's just that I think practicing becoming the observer, I would come back to meditation in a way that, meditating regularly is a practice for the mind to become the observer, so that it's the same like, training our muscles. I think we've had this example before. You go to the gym regularly, or you lift weights regularly, or you do Pilates or whatever it is that you're doing to train your muscles to become better at something, to become stronger. And the mind needs that practice as well. So meditating regularly is a practice for the mind to become better at being the observer in our daily stuff, so that when we do get into reaction, we then it's then easier to take that step back and to take a breath and to become observer again. And with that, I think the other thing that comes up for me is that word responsibility. We take that responsibility. So a tool that's probably for me a tool as well, especially as a highly sensitive person. I think within, the society at the moment, we're very conditioned still to point the finger outside of us, to say that makes me feel, or this person makes me feel this way, or even I hear this a lot as well. Yeah, because of the full moon, I feel this way. So to say, that in the spiritual context of things,
Mhm.
or because of the planets, I feel this sort of way. And I think if we learn to switch that narrative, to switch that perspective in, hey, okay, it's not outside of me, it's actually within me, and outside is the reflection. That's where we take the responsibility again. And we need that step first to be able to take the next step to work with it at a deeper level. Because if we keep pointing outside, we're never gonna change it. We're never gonna transform it. So I think the tool is going into a reaction, feeling a negative feeling, feeling overwhelmed with whatever it is that's coming up. It's to come into an acknowledgement of, okay, within me, my energy is out of balance, and something outside of me is showing me that. That's been a massive change in my journey, that I do not blame outside anymore. And even if I do, then, then that's the reflection, then that's the thing to work with. Okay, I apparently something's causing me to blame, so I need to take that back in. Probably, I'm just thinking sort of like, what are ways then that I from there start to work with it. I have phases, I have to say. There's certain phases where I really like a certain tool and it really works for me, and then another phase, it's something else. I know for me, dancing, shaking it out really helps for me to also sort of acknowledge, okay, there's this feeling in me, I'm acknowledging it, and that then allows me to make the meditation a bit easier, because sometimes the mind is just so busy that I cannot sit and observe it. I just need to feel it in my body. So dancing, even, like screaming, sounding, crying, just whatever I need really, in a safe space, in my own room or wherever, in the car. That helps me to acknowledge that there's something sitting in me that's bubbling up, and that then eventually makes the meditation easier. Then I can come back to observing it. So that's a tool. And I think once I'm ready from the emotion, feeling the emotion, to then go deeper and work with that deeper programming, that's where I use a decree. So a decree is a statement out loud to the universe saying that you're going to release programming that's not serving you anymore, limiting beliefs, thought patterns, etc. And that's where then the real shift comes, that we don't experience those negative and dense emotions so often anymore. But we open up to a new perspective of more peace, calm, and joy. And that perspective becomes the new norm. Not saying that there's no grief, sadness, anger, whatever anymore, but by what you said, about the cycle, that there's a cycle to move through, by really finishing that cycle every time, like from the emotion, the trigger, feeling it, becoming curious, diving deeper, releasing the programming, embracing a new truth, embracing a new perspective. That's where life and reality starts to change. And then, yes, of course, a new trigger will come along, but the space sometimes between it becomes a bit bigger, and there's more space for joy, there's more space for peace, rather than the other dense emotions. Yeah. How's that for you? What tools do you use?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them that you say, probably all of them, especially the dancing one, that resonates. I've got a Joyce Park about that, I think, actually. Just thinking. Yeah, and then for me as well, actually naming what I'm experiencing out loud. I think there's something really powerful about you hearing yourself name it. I mean, I'm doing a lot of stuff around inner child parts at the moment, so I imagine that my inner child part is by me, adult me, expressing it out loud. My inner child says, she hears me. So I think that's really powerful. But also for the people around you as well. Like, even sometimes, sometimes I get cross with friends. Sometimes, trying to brush her teeth is frustrating. And I will say, I'm feeling quite cross. And I think it's really helpful for other people to hear how we're feeling as well, because then I think there's just something really powerful about putting that energy out there. And then another thing that I'm just being introduced to with my course is the felt sense, which is essentially a meditation where you very much go into your body and you engage with a sensation within your body. And for instance, I was doing it last night, I was practicing it, and I've had this sort of back injury for a couple of months. And I went into this meditation thinking all I'm going to think about is this back pain, and because it was so intense last night. And because I focused on it and I allowed it to be there and sort of held it in compassion, within 2 or 3 minutes it had completely gone. So I think, I feel that the felt sense it's new, so I'm sort of understanding it, and I'm sure it will come up more within School of Joy. But I think that could be a really powerful tool as well, of just engaging with actually your physical sensations, because, as we've talked about, emotion gets stored in our body. Our mind can bat it away, but it is still in there. So I think, that's probably another one that I will be exploring and definitely sharing more of in future.
That really reminds me, actually, I had this chat with my friend the other day. She follows my Pilates classes, and in the Pilates classes, we always start foam rolling. And foam rolling is kind of like a deep tissue massage, but then do it yourself. So it works with the fascia. And in the fascia, we store emotions if we suppress them, And she shared, yesterday she felt physically, mentally, emotionally off. So she decided not to go to class, but take 30 minutes to do foam rolling at home. And she felt a complete different person afterwards. She said there was an obvious before and after. And so, that's what we do if we, engage with what's stored in the fascia. And if we actually go to the discomfort, because I always say to people that's with the foam rolling, it's such a good metaphor or analogy for what happens when we go to the pain, when we go to the discomfort. We give it attention, we're starting to massage the discomfort, the trigger point, so that the body can then, from giving it attention, we can let go of the tension. And that's, if we give our attention, I heard that a couple weeks ago as well, that's where it can let go. That's where it can release. Yeah, for me, actually, now you said that, I was like, oh yeah, the foam roller is actually such a physical tool, really, to go to the tension that we're feeling in our physical bodies, that we're not, even though it feels as though we only work through it on the physical level, we're actually also working on the emotional level, because that's where it's suppressed in the and held in the physical body. Yeah.
Like with my back last night, there's no way I thought that was going to happen. I've had that experience before, but last night it was so intense. I was like, I'm just going to spend 20 minutes thinking about how painful my back is.
Yeah.
And then the shift was so rapid. It was just incredible.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
such a powerful, I love that. Give tension your attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved hearing that quote as well. Yeah. Such a good reminder. You said you had a joy spark. I don't have one yet, so I have to
Okay.
let one come up. So maybe one sparks from your joy spark.
Yeah, so I have been going through for a few months. I've been going through a really, really big process of uncovering some stuff around me that was deeply suppressed. And I was, as part of our breathwork course, we were expected to do a very deep inner journey. And I sort of very naively went into that thinking, oh, I'm all good, I don't need to. And yeah, so naive. But it did bring up some really, really deep stuff. Or I suppose stuff that I've already looked at, but in a much deeper way. And yeah, so it's taken me a while, and I have sought external support for dealing with that, which has been great as well. But the other day, I've just been very aware that there's been a lot of emotion that has been wanting to come up, and I haven't felt a way to do that. I've been sort of waiting for a way to have a big emotional release. And yeah, and and I've been having a lot of issues with my throat chakra, feeling really, really closed up. Anyway, the other day I was sharing with my buddies from Maths This Way, just on a voice note, and the tears started to come. And and then I was like, okay, great. I'm just gonna let this I was at home on my own in the house, so I was like, okay. So I went upstairs, shut my bedroom curtains, put on music, and just let it all out. And it was yeah, I mean, I've written a blog about it, which I haven't published yet, but I will be putting that on, because it was such a beautiful expression. I mean, it probably was really ugly, but it was so great just to get it all out. There was crying, there was shouting, there was dancing, there was even joy, like there was a lot of joy. And I just, it was, yeah, just, I mean, such an expression of everything we've been talking about on this episode.
Wow.
And I do feel so much lighter since then. Yeah, so that's my joy spark. Again, not very joyful, but was joyful because it was such a huge release. And I think also it's just such a gift to give yourself
Hmm.
that space to get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say that, it's like we should all have, adult tantrums, I feel. Should become like a thing. I mean, I guess some people already are more into this and they do allow themselves, but maybe if you're listening and you still struggle with that, it's such a relief. It's such a big relief when you do give yourself that permission. And it reminds me of a similar experience in the last couple weeks. I've worked with some consciousness around the fear of, or more the question around why do I fear that I lack in life? In the rational sense, I know I don't lack and life is abundant, But lately, in the last couple months, in many aspects in my life, I've felt this energy come up of me not being enough, me not giving enough, or me lacking, towards other people, towards my business, towards myself, towards my relationship. And that's a familiar energy. I know that's something that has come back repeatedly, and I have been working through that in many ways. Yet this time around, I felt, ooh, this is like, I feel that I'm really, really asked to shift a big chunk of this. Like it felt like such a massive block stuck energy. And I also felt guided to reach out for support this time because I wasn't able to hold that just myself. And it's been a long time since I've had that, but I really embraced that. And yeah, I did a scribe healing, which we might talk about in some episodes as well, a bit more, which is basically energy from past lifetimes that you work with, like consciousness that you work with. And I asked that question, and what came up from that in the first session, wow, when you said it was probably ugly, I was going to say as well, I've had the ugliest cry I've had in ages, and the fact that I was able to call in support where I felt safe, to just cry ugly. It came from the depths of my soul, that was such a big relief, like I remember release. And the scribe healing has like two parts of it. And then last week I had the second part. And I have felt, since that, like, because you also say a decree, you also make a statement out loud that from that energy created, that unresolved karma you've created from past lifetimes and you've taken into this lifetime, you then state out loud that you're releasing that. And I felt the biggest shift in my energy then as well through my emotions. I'm not feeling anymore that I'm lacking. There's just a deeper peace and calm. There's more joy coming in as well. There's just literally more space. And I think I shared with you this analogy or this metaphor of the garden, that I've felt that for a couple months I've been sitting in this overgrown garden with weeds, like just and I've been in freeze in the middle of that, like overwhelmed with all the weeds. And I felt that this healing really helped me create space in my garden as well. And I've been plucking out the weeds, not just by myself, but also calling for support, helping me, clearing out the garden. And I feel that there's now space again to blossom, for new flowers to come up in spring. And yeah, that just feels, in the moment when you're feeling the emotions, it doesn't feel joyful. But in the end, it's the biggest gift, as you said, it's the biggest gift you can give yourself to create space for joy again, to fill your field. And that's, yeah, so very much resonate. Thank you for your joy spark, because it reminded me of that. This has been a big joy spark for me lately as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that gardening analogy. It's so cool. Yeah, when you said it, you messaged me a while ago and said about it, and I was like, that's perfect.
Mm.
We'll soon take a short moment to ground and anchor together. If this conversation resonated and you'd like to go a little deeper, we'd love to welcome you into our Joy Circle, a monthly newsletter where we share extra reflections, meditations, and resources to support you. You can find us on Instagram at School of Joy Podcast, and we'd love for you to support us on our mission to spread more light and joy in the world by sharing with family and friends. You'll find all the links in the episode description. Thanks again for listening.
Let us take a moment to acknowledge whatever it is that we're feeling right in this moment. Breathing into this. Connecting with how we are feeling. Physically, emotionally, mentally. Let us give thanks to all these feelings, all these emotions, all these sensations. Because therefore we know that we are alive, that energy is moving through us. And that in itself is something to be very grateful for.